My life was a symphony of chopping knives and the clatter of plates, a quiet, orderly existence far from the world of power and high-stakes deals. My one secret, my one connection to a past I tried to forget, was my love for a language I rarely spoke. He was the CEO, a man of cold precision, living in a world of glass towers and million-dollar contracts. I was just the cook. But in a moment of crisis, our two worlds collided. My secret became his salvation, and in the chaos of a business meeting, I found my purpose, my strength, and an impossible love. This is our story. I was a ghost in the company building. My name was Yuna, but to the thousands of employees who ate in the corporate cafeteria, I was simply the cook. My life was a well-oiled machine of routine and predictability. I woke up at 5 in the morning, the scent of fresh bread and simmering stews already in my mind. The kitchen was my kingdom, a place where order and precision were not just appreciated but required. I took pride in my work, in the small details that made a simple meal a source of comfort for others. But my life was not just about the kitchen. It was about a past I was trying to outrun, a past that I kept locked away in a part of my mind that no one could ever reach. My secret was a language. The language of love, the language of art, the language of my past, French. I had studied abroad, I had traveled, I had lived a life of ambition and big dreams, but a series of unfortunate events, a family crisis, and a personal betrayal had forced me to return to Seoul and take a job that was a world away from the one I was meant to have. I didn't mind. The kitchen was a safe place. It was a place where my past didn't matter, where my talents were measured by the taste of a dish, not by my last name or my family's status. I was content with being invisible. My one daily luxury was my short break in the afternoon. I would go to the small rooftop garden, put on my headphones, and listen to French audiobooks. The sound of the language was a constant comfort, a small reminder of a life I once had. I would close my eyes and imagine myself walking on the streets of Paris, feeling the warm sun on my face. It was in one of these moments that I saw him, the CEO, Seo Jin. He was a man of power, a figure of cold perfection. He was always surrounded by a posse of assistants and managers, his face a mask of focus and determination. He never looked at us, the people in the kitchen. We were just part of the machinery that kept his world running. I never thought our paths would cross. He was the sun and I was the earth, separated by an unbridgeable distance. But sometimes, fate has a different plan. The company was on the verge of closing a major contract with a French client, and the tension in the building was palpable. Everyone was on edge, talking in hushed tones about the importance of the deal. I would hear snippets of conversation from the managers who would come to the kitchen to grab a cup of coffee. The client is a nightmare. He's refusing to budge on the terms. Our translator is struggling. I didn't think much of it. It was not my problem. My problem was making sure the soup was not too salty and the rice was perfectly cooked. But my world was about to be turned upside down. The crisis came on a Tuesday. The day was tense, and the air in the building was thick with unspoken anxiety. The French client, a notoriously difficult man named Monsieur Moreau, was in a closed-door meeting with our CEO and the top executives. The whispers in the kitchen were a constant stream of worry. The meeting is not going well. The client is getting angry. He said he's ready to walk away. I tried to ignore it all, but the tension was contagious. I was on my way to my break, a cup of green tea in my hand, when I passed the conference room. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear the panicked voices from inside. I stopped, my heart pounding in my chest. The voices were loud, angry, and full of desperation. I could hear the translator, a young woman with a high-pitched voice stumbling over her words. She was trying her best, but she was missing the nuance, the cultural codes that were so important in a French negotiation. I could hear Monsieur Moreau's voice, a low rumble of frustration. He was being condescending, almost insulting. "We are not children. We are businessmen," he said, his voice full of contempt. "We are here to do a deal, not to play games." The deal was on the brink of collapse. I could feel it in the air. I heard our CEO, Seo Jin, his voice usually so calm and authoritative, now filled with a hint of panic. He was trying to placate the client, but he was failing. He was losing control of the situation. He looked desperate, and for the first time, I saw him not as a cold figure of power, but as a man who was on the verge of losing everything. My heart went out to him. It was not my problem. I was just a cook, but my blood was boiling. I had lived in France. I had worked with French people. I knew how to handle a situation like this. I knew how to talk to a man like him, but I was just a cook. I was invisible. I was torn. I could walk away, pretend I heard nothing, and go back to my safe, predictable life. Or I could do something. I could use my talent, the one thing that I had tried so hard to hide. I could risk everything. My job, my invisibility, my safety, for a man who didn't even know my name. But the thought of him, the thought of his desperation, made me move. My feet were moving on their own. They were taking me closer to the door, closer to the meeting, closer to the risk. I was about to do the most impulsive thing I had ever done in my entire life. I was about to step out of the shadows and into the light. I was about to save him. The conference room was a battlefield. Everyone was tense, angry, and frustrated. The air was thick with tension, a palpable force that made everyone's nerves stand on end. I pushed the door open, my heart pounding in my chest, a drumbeat of pure adrenaline. Everyone looked at me, their faces a mask of shock and confusion. The CEO, Seo Jin, was the most shocked of all. His eyes, usually so cold and composed, were wide with disbelief. He was about to ask me what I was doing there, but I didn't give him a chance. I walked towards the table, my head held high, and looked at Monsieur Moreau, the French client. His face was a mask of cold contempt. He was ready to walk away, to leave us all in the dust. I took a deep breath and spoke. My voice, usually so quiet and reserved, was now clear and confident. Monsieur Moreau, I said, my French perfect, my accent flawless. I apologize for the intrusion. I believe there has been a misunderstanding. My boss, Mr. Seo Jin, did not mean to offend you. He simply meant to express his admiration for your work. We are all deeply honored to have you here. The French client's eyes, which were once full of anger, were now wide with shock. He was stunned. He looked at me, a cook in a company uniform, speaking to him in his native tongue, with a confidence that no one else had. I continued to speak, using my knowledge of French culture and business etiquette to smooth things over. I rephrased the CEO's words, adding a layer of respect and charm that had been missing before. I talked about his company's reputation, his country's history, and his personal style. I talked to him as an equal. The client's face softened. He smiled. The ice was broken. He was no longer a cold businessman, but a man who was impressed by my intelligence and my unexpected talent. We talked for an hour, about everything from French cuisine to Korean art to business ethics. I was no longer the cook. I was a professional, a negotiator, a diplomat. I was in my element. I was living my dream. I was a person again. Seo Jin, who was watching this all with a look of stunned disbelief, was speechless. He saw me not as a cook, but as a woman of immense talent and intelligence. He saw the fire in my eyes, the passion in my voice. He saw the person I was meant to be. The meeting was a success. We closed the deal, and Monsieur Moreau, with a big smile on his face, shook my hand. You, mademoiselle, he said, his voice full of admiration, are a rare gem, a true professional. He left, and the room was silent. Everyone was looking at me. They were looking at the cook who had just saved the company. The room was silent, and my heart was pounding. Everyone was staring at me, a mixture of shock, confusion, and respect on their faces. The CEO, Seo Jin, was the most shocked of all. His eyes, which were once cold and distant, were now full of a strange intensity. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. Who are you? He asked, his voice a low whisper. Why are you working in the kitchen? Why can you speak French? Why did you save us? The questions came out in a torrent, a mix of anger, relief, and confusion. I was embarrassed. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to go back to my quiet, invisible life, but it was too late. I was no longer a ghost. I explained that I was just a cook. I told him about my past, about my time in France, about my love for the language. I didn't go into the details of my family's crisis or my personal betrayal. I just told him the bare minimum. He listened, his face a mask of focus and determination. When I finished, he was silent for a long time. The other executives were looking at me, their faces full of questions. He was a man of action, and he had a plan. He looked at me, his eyes full of respect. I need you, he said, his voice a low rumble. I need you to be my personal assistant. I need you to be my translator. I need you to work with me. You saved us, Yuna. You saved this company. I owe you a debt, and I will pay it back. I will give you a new life. The offer was a shock. It was a chance to start over, a chance to live my dream again. But I was hesitant. I was afraid of the attention, the scrutiny, the pressure. I was afraid of the world of glass towers and million-dollar contracts. It was a world that had once betrayed me. But the look in Seo Jin's eyes was one of genuine admiration. He was not just offering me a job. He was offering me a second chance. He was offering me a new beginning. He saw my hesitation. Think about it, he said, his voice softer now. You can come to my office tomorrow and we can talk about it. No pressure. He smiled. It was a rare, genuine smile, and it lit up his entire face. And in that moment, I knew I had to accept. I had to take the risk. I had to believe in him. I went home that night and I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. I was no longer a cook. I was a woman with a past, a woman with a future. I was a woman who was about to embark on the most important journey of her life. I was Yuna, and I was ready to face the world. My transition from the kitchen to the executive floor was a culture shock. The world of starched white uniforms and clanging pots was replaced by a world of tailored suits, hushed tones, and the constant hum of computers. The change was difficult. My colleagues, the ones who had once smiled politely at me in the cafeteria, were now resentful and jealous. They They whispered behind my back, their eyes full of suspicion. Who is she? Why is she here? She's just a cook. The resentment was palpable. It was a constant reminder of my past, and it made me feel like an imposter. Seo Jin's personal assistant, a powerful and manipulative woman named Sora, was the worst of all. She was an ice queen, her face a mask of fake smiles and condescending glances. She treated me with disdain, giving me menial tasks and making sure everyone knew that I was just the cook who got lucky. She was a constant threat, and I felt like a small bird in a cage, constantly on the lookout for a predator. The pressure was immense. I wanted to quit. I wanted to go back to my quiet, invisible life, but I couldn't. I had to prove myself. My only solace was Seo Jin. He was not just my boss, he was my mentor. He taught me everything, from the company's financial records to the art of negotiation. He was patient and kind, and he never once made me feel like I was a burden. He saw my intelligence, my loyalty, my quiet strength. He saw the person I was, not the person they thought I was. We spent long hours together in his office, talking about business, about life, about our pasts. He told me about his life, about the pressure to be perfect, about his family's expectations. He was not just a cold businessman. He was a man who was fighting to be himself. We were two lonely souls, two outcasts in our own worlds, and in our solitude, we found each other. Our friendship deepened into something more. I found myself looking forward to our time together. I found myself wanting to be around him. He made me feel seen. He made me feel valued. He made me feel loved. He was my protector, my rock, my safe haven. He was the one person who believed in me, who saw my potential, who fought for me. And in his eyes, I was no longer a ghost. I was Yuna, and I was a woman with a future. The rumors started subtly. A whisper here, a knowing glance there. They were spread by Sora, Seo Jin's personal assistant, and they were designed to bring me down. She used her connections, her family's influence, and her poisonous words to turn my colleagues against me. She's not a translator, they whispered. She's a fraud. She's a gold digger. She's using the CEO. The rumors were like daggers, and they pierced my heart. The pressure was immense. I wanted to quit. I wanted to go back to my quiet, invisible life, but I couldn't. I had to fight. To make things worse, Seo Jin's family, a powerful and influential family in the business world, started to get involved. His mother, a woman with a face of stone and eyes of judgment, called him. Seo Jin, she said, her voice a cold whisper. I've heard about this woman. You know the rules. You cannot be seen with someone like her. You must marry someone of our status. You cannot tarnish our family's reputation. The words were a warning. A threat. Seo Jin was in a difficult position. He was being pulled between his family's expectations and his heart's desire. I felt guilty. I was the reason for all this chaos. I was the one who was bringing him down. The breaking point came at a major company event. Sora, with a smile of a viper, approached us. Mr. Seo Jin, she said, her voice dripping with poison. I'm so glad to see you. I have some news. I have a formal complaint against Yuna for fraud and incompetence. I believe she is not qualified to be your personal assistant. I believe she is a threat to the company. My blood ran cold. My heart was pounding in my chest. I knew she was a threat. I knew she was going to ruin me, but I was not going to give up. I had to fight. Seo Jin looked at her, his face a mask of anger. He looked at me, and he saw my pain, my humiliation, my fear. He was not going to let her win. He was not going to let her destroy me. He took my hand, his touch warm and comforting. Sora, he said, his voice a low rumble. I'm sorry, but you are mistaken. Yuna is the most talented, the most intelligent, the most dedicated person I know. She is not a threat to the company. She is the company. She is the future. And as for your complaint, I will handle it personally. And as for your future, I believe it is time for you to leave. The words were a warning, a threat. Sora was shocked. She was speechless. She was defeated. She turned and walked away, her face a mask of anger and humiliation. Seo Jin, my savior, my hero, my love, took my hand and led me away from the crowd. He took me to a quiet corner, and he looked at me, his eyes full of love, his voice a whisper. I'm sorry, Yuna, he said, his voice full of regret. I should have protected you. I should have told you how I feel. I'm so sorry. The words were a confession, a declaration. My heart was pounding. I was in a dream. I was in a fairy tale. The incident with Sora was the talk of the company for weeks. Seo Jin's public defense of me sent a clear message to everyone. I was not a cook who got lucky. I was the CEO's new secret weapon. My reputation was restored, and my place in the company was solidified. The rumors stopped, and the jealousy subsided. The executives who had once looked down on me now came to me for advice. I was no longer a ghost. I was a person. But the most important change was in my relationship with Seo Jin. The lines between boss and employee were now gone. We were just two people who were in love. He was not just my mentor. He was my love. And I was not just his employee. I was his partner. We spent long hours together talking about our dreams, about our our future, about our love. He told me that he loved me for my quiet strength, for my resilience, for my kindness. He loved me for my past and for my future. He loved me for who I was, not for what I could do for him. He loved me for being a person, not a tool. One evening, after a long day of work, he took me to the company's rooftop garden. The city lights were twinkling in the distance, a sea of diamonds. The air was cool and crisp. We were alone, and the world was silent. He looked at me, and the look in his eyes was one of pure love. "Yuna," he said, his voice a low whisper, "I'm in love with you. I fell for you the moment you walked into that conference room. You were not just a cook. You were a hero. You were a woman with a purpose. You saved me, Yuna. You saved my company, but you also saved my life. You taught me that true value is not found in a person's title or status, but in their heart, in their soul." His declaration was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard in my life. The tears came, and I hugged him. "I love you too, Seo-jin," I said, my voice a whisper. "I loved you from afar, and I love you even more now. You are my safe haven. You are my home. You are my love." We kissed. The kiss was not just a kiss. It was a promise of a future that was ours, a future that we had built with our own hearts. Our relationship was now public, and the challenges were different. We were no longer fighting against the world. We were fighting against a world of judgment and expectations. My family was overjoyed with my success, but they were worried about the public scrutiny. His family was furious. They called him, threatened him, and tried to force him to end the relationship. They didn't understand. They didn't see the love. They just saw the difference in our status, the difference in our worlds. But we were not going to give up. We were not going to let them win. We were in love, and our love was stronger than their expectations, stronger than their judgment. We were a team, and we were going to fight for our love. Seo-jin, with his usual determination, stood up to his family. He told them that he loved me and that he was not going to leave me. He told them that I was the woman he was going to marry. His words were a warning, a threat. His family was defeated. They had lost, but we were not fighting against them. We were fighting for us. We were fighting for our love, our future, our happiness. We were fighting for a world where love was not measured by status or wealth, but by the heart. We were fighting for a world where people were not judged by their titles, but by their souls. We were a revolution. We were a story. We were a dream. In the end, Seo-jin made a decision that shocked everyone. He decided to leave his position as CEO of his family's company. He told his family that he wanted to build a company that was based on merit, not on status. He wanted to build a company where people were judged by their talents, not by their last names. He wanted to build a company with me, his partner, his love. It was a risky decision, a crazy decision, but it was our decision, and it was the best decision we had ever made. Together, we built a new company, a small company at first, but a company with a big heart. We worked tirelessly, side by side, building our dream. We were not just partners in love, we were partners in life. Our office was a small, cozy place, far from the world of glass towers and million-dollar contracts. It was a place where we could be ourselves, where we could be in love, where we could be a team. We were not rich, but we were happy. We were not famous, but we were in love. We were not a perfect couple, but we were a real one. Our life was a symphony of love and laughter. We were not just living, we were living a dream. We were Yuna and Seo-jin, the cook and the CEO, the two people who were not supposed to be together, but who were meant to be. Our story was not just a story of love, it was a story of hope, a story of redemption, a story of fighting for your dreams. The final chapter of our story was a quiet, private moment. We were in our new office, working side by side. We were talking, but not about business. We were talking about us. We were talking about our love. We were talking in French, our secret language, the language of our love. He looked at me, and his eyes were full of love. "Yuna," he said, his voice a whisper, "you are not just my partner. You are my home. You are my life. You are my love." The words were a promise, a vow. I hugged him, and the tears came. "I love you too, Seo-jin," I said, my voice a whisper. "You saved me. You gave me my life back. You gave me a reason to fight. You gave me everything." Our life was a dream that we had built with our own hands, with our own hearts. Our story was not a fairy tale. It was a real story, a story of two people who were meant to be, a story of a love that was stronger than anything. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Thank you for listening to our story. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to the channel for a new episode every day. We'll be waiting for you. See you in the next story.